I'd like to thank our sponsors, Blood Moon Box, a monthly subscription box service for period pads and tampons to help support all humans who have a cycle for that time of the month, and no need to run to a store to mix and match period supplies that don't cater to the entire ebbs and flows of your cycle. There are 2 box options based on your cycle, light and medium, and then heavy. And in addition to the period products, you'll also receive PMS herbal teas, a candle, and some other items for your time of the month. You can reserve a box by navigating to bloodmoonbox.com. And bloodmoonbox.com is on a mission to destigmatize the idea of period blood. At Blood Moon Box, they believe that it is the time to honor the enchanting magic within every person who has a cycle. So join us in embracing the magic of your cycle with Blood Moon Box. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. On today's episode, I speak with Remington Donovan. He's a teacher and author and trained in the spiritual wisdom of the ancients. And he was quite literally born into the traditions of mysticism, spirituality, and meditation, which naturally evolved into his now over 30 years of experience practicing with tarot and numerology. And along with performing thousands of private readings, Remington teaches and also speaks all over the world. He hosts the Mystical Artist podcast with his wife, Jeana, and leads the Mystical Arts Mystery School. He's also got a number of books on numerology and prosperity. And I'm just so excited to welcome Remington to the show because numerology has been a topic that a lot of people have been requesting in terms of learning more about. And so we have Remington now on the show. So welcome to the show, Remington.
Yasmin, thank you so much. Yeah, all right, numerology, so much to probably get into. So I'm grateful to be here.
Likewise. So to kick it off, Remington, can you tell people who are listening, and we've got listeners from 70 plus countries. So let's kick it off and really talk about like exactly what numerology is, and also how it can help us understand the world that we live in.
Okay, it's numerology is sort of funny. It's like so loaded. When I really started learning the art and science and spirituality of it, my teacher said, the first rule is there are no rules. So on some level, trying to define it is challenging. But I also have sort of definitions what it does, and this is a good question. So in and of itself, numerology, it's the practice of it, which is basically like a yoga. It's a meditation. The practice of it starts to open up your consciousness. And through that opening, and the more you do it, like any type of practice or discipline, the more you just sort of sync up. And but we're utilizing the lens of numbers. So a lot of people get caught up, like they want it to be, what does this mean? What does this mean? And the numbers do have messages, right? It's probably similar to shamans who I know who might notice animal signs or something. I'm noticing number signs, and it's an invisible language. And it starts to reveal itself when you work with it. And the universe basically has a lot of messages for all of us. And numerology, numerology is one of those languages to decipher those messages. So there's that, you can get sort of a result. But my experience of doing it for so long is just the practice opens it up where all of a sudden the sort of answers start just coming in. And numerology is very much about synchronicity. And synchronicity is a sign of destiny. And what it turns out is that the practice of numerology starts to align the synchronicity. Like I have just countless stories. I could be in a podcast interview, texting with somebody, maybe we're talking about a certain number, whatever, 777 is a popular one. And next thing, they get off the call or the podcast and they're seeing 777 everywhere. And I shared some of the meaning and what that potentially could be. And then that started happening and these sort of opportunities showed up. But I mean, it's ancient. Numerology is rooted in so many cultures and spiritual traditions. But I use the framework of mystical Kabbalah and yogic numerology because they merge seamlessly, and that's also I share what I know. But it's also not just what I know, it's what I love and what I've been actually working with. So I have it's embedded in me. I live and breathe it. Um, but we could literally, we could spend the rest of our life. We could talk about the number two.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay. So thanks for kicking off. So it sounds like numerology is of multi kind of faceted, multi-layered kind of framework really to understand the world. And so I have so many questions now. How is, before we kind of dive in, because you say you study the Kabbalah kind of yogic numerology, and I believe that you also, it's similar to tantric numerology. How is that kind of different than any other type of numerology?
In a way, I don't know because I don't delve into these other systems, so I don't have as much familiarity. I'm willing to assume um, there's very a lot of crossover. So mystical Kabbalah, I mean, I'm trained and taught, and it's it's a practice, right? It's not a study and a theory. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there, they read some books and they're learned, and I study mystical Kabbalah. It's really a process of life, and a deeper part of that numerology can also be something called gematria. I know a lot of modern Hebrew speakers are going to say it's gematria, but I was taught it a certain way with certain pronunciations. And what I learned through mystical Kabbalah is it's sort of like this almost like universal key of everything. And so I utilize the tree of life, and I look at, just for beginners, numbers 1 through 10. Well, 11, really, it's a little arguable, but I guess I could say 1 through 11. And I've been working with this since a teenager. And I then learned tantric yogic numerology. Now, I also grew up on a yogic ashram, but I didn't learn numerology through that. I learned that through my Kundalini yoga practice. And what I learned is they completely merge. So the system I already had in me when I learned the tantric system of doing a chart, I mean, I immediately knew it. And it was kind of funny because one of my teachers, Gurjas, she's the singer for White Sun, who you might be familiar with.
Oh yeah, we've had on the show.
Oh, okay. She's I mean, she was she's one of my teachers. She's also a really dear friend, but she gave me this it's like a booklet years ago when I first started coming around. And she said, you should master this. And then I brought it home. I read the little book, and then I saw her the next day and I was like, all right, I have it. And because I've already been working with numbers, and what blew me away, but I shouldn't even be surprised, but I always take delight in these quote coincidences. Oh, rule number 2 of numerology: there is no coincidence. um, but or maybe no coincidence, then there are no rules. But um, it's just there's a seamless merge. So my book, for example, I merged the 2 techniques because one just has some definitions, whereas the tantric, I was able to utilize a chart. And so in that reference, I also use numerology, not just for messages like, oh, I'm seeing this, this address is 752, or this license plate had 111. Believe me, you should see my text threads or my DMs. I can't get to everything, but the system of doing a chart based on your birthday just revealed so much in mine, just even through the book. I was like, this is really spot on. And I was able to take it a lot deeper because all of this Kabbalah is really embedded with me. I've dedicated my life not to the study, but to the practice.
Amazing.
And also learning that through Kundalini Yoga. Kundalini Yoga is a secret mystery tradition. Hermetic Western magical tradition. So I learned Kabbalah with, I call it Q Kabbalah because we spell it Qabalah, mystical Kabbalah. That just has a certain implied reference to that lineage, which is the Western sort of Hermetic magical tradition. And um, they just that is a secret mystery school as well. So they're coming from the same source. Like I know that.
Right.
And one of my teachers had shared that with me too. So these sort of secret teachings and this mystical wisdom and spiritual wisdom um is rooted in source, and then it filters through over time and over centuries and centuries, literally in thousands of millennia. It just filters through different cultures. So maybe there's slightly different expressions, but it's essentially the same.
So, okay, and I actually am a big Kundalini yogini, so I do practice a lot
Okay,
myself.
that'll
So,
make this easier.
yeah, so yeah, and I definitely understand Kriyas and all that language and that world, which is also how we connected with our mutual friend Joanna. So,
Yes.
yeah,
She just had her birthday.
it's amazing. Okay, I have to reach out to her. So,
Yeah, well, I forgot. And I
oh.
know it's like we're probably the time of this airing's past, but I talk to her daily, so
Yeah, so you could always jump in a happy, belated. So, Remington, I want to talk a little bit about the numerology kind of that you've outlined in your book, which was amazing, by the way, and really talk about the differences between like life number, gift, soul path, and what that means. And feel free to also, you can use my birthday as an example. But yeah, I want to kind of set the context for what some of these themes mean and how our audience can actually take a look at their own birthday and come up with their own meaning behind some of these numbers.
well, I will suggest that everyone should get my book, Numerology, A Beginner's Guide to the Spiritual Meaning of Numbers, and I do lay it all out. So what I do for my book is I utilize the tantric system, which is a great system for a chart. So based on your birthday, you have there's really you can get into a 10 system placement, but the 5 system that I use for the book, like that's your main jam. Like this is you. And first off, I want to say that whatever the place, I'll explain the placements and then some of the numbers, but it's what it's showing you is a of in a way it's a flow of energy and it shows you tendencies. And I use it for optimization. Like what's the sort of highest potential on these different frequencies. The thing is, when I do a reading though, the messages that come through, you have to apply it as an intuitive, meditative, sort of poetic practice, because then, like, the real depth, the real juice is going to really come out then. But in the beginning, I get you're going to be referencing through a book and whatnot. But in the 5 system placement, or the 5 placement system, I should say, there's what's known as your soul number. And that is so it's all based on your birthday. So your soul number is the day of the month that you're born. And in this system, we will take a number, and like if you're born on 29, we will add the digits together and reduce it. Now, most numbers will reduce to a single digit, but if it reduces to 10 or to 11, we keep it at that. For example, I'm born on the 28th of the month, so my soul number is a 10. But if I was born on the 24th, I would add 2 plus 4, and that would be 6. So it's really simple. So that there's your soul. And this is like your this is your clue. This is your code of really not just who you are, but like where you want to be and like where your kind of sweet spot for life is. And where when you're in that your soul number, that's just where you're really like you're going to have a lot of impact and create a lot more success. Like I literally really what I'm doing is numerology for success. So the soul is we're kind of yearn for that. It's a number that like when you learn it, you're like, yeah, that is what I want. That is who I am, but maybe I'm not quite there. And then I'm going to skip ahead because then there's something called your life path number, which is usually the last one I do in the reading. But that is, and a lot of like, there's, Pythagorean numerology, and you'll meet people and they're like, I'm a 7. And in this system, that's the life path number, which is where you add up your entire birthday, like the year, the 4-digit year, right? So if you're born in 82, make sure it's 1982. And also add it up with per single digit. You'll find that even if you add up like, 928, 19 plus 82, it usually, and you reduce it, it becomes the same. But I have noticed, because I do thousands of readings, or I've done thousands of readings, that you'll have a few numbers where it could come out as like 2 or 11. So I'm over explaining it, but I just want your listeners to know. But if you want to know your life path number, which is a great place to really begin if you're just going to look at one number. So you add up your whole birthday, and that life path number is going to tell you your direction. It's your path in life. So it's kind of like the work you need to do to get to that point that is like your soul, which is like your fulfillment of purpose on some level. And then let's get into, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So could you give us an example in each of these? So feel free to also take mine if you want to just give kind of a broad overview of what kind of
What's your
information.
birthday?
5/5. Do I have to say the dates?
Yeah, I need the year. In LA, I'm like, I always have to tell people, like, don't lie.
It's 1983.
Oh, it is 83. So I picked up on that.
Mm-hmm.
That I dealt with a bunch of 83 clients today.
Amazing.
It's
Okay.
83. I better look into what 83 means a little deeper. So then we just add up. What do we have? 5 plus 5 is 10 plus 1. To be honest, I actually, for path number, just because I have clients, high dollar writing and all of this, I'll just sometimes double check. So I get, 31.
Yep. So 4.
Yeah. So no matter, like I added up a few different ways, like 112, but you add those 1 plus 1 plus 2. So your life path is 4. So that's going to tell you, look, Yasmin, this is the path. This is what you got to utilize, the energy, the teachings of 4. And the more you apply this to your life, it's going to really help you get to where you're going. So it could be, sometimes it's big picture. I can read careers. I've seen medical things, issues. I don't touch on that unless I really know somebody, because since COVID, like everything's gotten weird and everybody's censored, and then they'll sue you and whatnot. But the 4 life path, like 4 in general, is a number of it's open-mindedness, and it's big picture awareness, and it's a very objective awareness. Now in mystical Kabbalah, it is also it's attributed to an area in the tree of life called Hesed, and that translates as mercy. And if you also, let's go back to yoga. Well, 4 is the fourth chakra. That's the heart. Well, Hesed is ruled by Jupiter, which is about high love, which is very similar to the frequency of the heart. So it's very non-judgmental, very open-minded. And there's a bliss that actually can be attained in there, because if you really distill down to the frequency of your heart, like, you're very accepting. You're going to be very accepting of yourself. You're going to be very accepting of others, and you're going to be very accepting of reality. So it's like, it kind of is a good number. It's sort of diplomatic. It's kind of fair. Like, I would hope, like, if I were in court, I would hope the judge is, and I were guilty, I would hope the judge at least is a 4. Like, they're going to be reasonable and merciful, you know. But where do you see, or where, I mean, here's the thing too, just to backtrack, like, one number can go on and on and on. The other thing you're allowed to do is, say you read my book, and I say in the book, use this little bit of knowledge as a springboard to go deeper. And you might be part of another spiritual tradition. You can merge this and start to free associate. What does 4 seem like to you? Why does a square have 4 sides, et cetera, et cetera? But, like, what would you say? I mean, I already have some ideas just based on doing a podcast with you, but where do you find that you're sort of diplomatic, open-minded to a lot of ideas, very open-minded to truth, hearing other voices, and sort of curating that?
Yeah, no, that's it's very fascinating. I think that the more that I operate from my heart rather than just privileging my mind, for example, I definitely can perceive more and witness more. And I think even just being on this as a host of this podcast, I've interviewed now over 170 guests, and a lot of people have very different philosophies and modalities. And I generally find myself, like you said, to be very accepting of the wide ranges of possibilities in the external world. And yeah, and I think that that's and I play that part for a lot of people in the work that I do as well, kind of behind the podcast. So I do find myself always kind of being a therapist, if you will, with friends or people that want a confidant. I am usually a confidant for others. And I operate at my best when I can live from my heart and make heart-based decisions, as opposed to solely mind-based decisions or ego-driven decisions. So I love that. I think that's just a good reminder. And then Jupiter, well, I have a lot of Sagittarius in my chart. So I think Jupiter in general, and I have a very strong relationship, the planet Jupiter, for those listening. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I'll stop there.
Well, you kind of said, like, like an inadvertent therapist or whatever, and that's like great, because for, like, it really allows the space for someone else to be who they are. So it's not judgmental. Now, the sort of the negative side, so each number can really follow, a negative trajectory if you want to take it in that direction. It's often more or less some level the sort of opposite characteristics of what's positive. So for this would be like highly prejudiced, super opinionated, closed, just sort of shut down, really small minded, as well as the Jupiter side, at one level, it could be sort of lazy, but it can also be enabling, right? So where it's like, I'm so accepting of you, you're in a relationship, and the person, whatever, your partner, like, they never wash a dish, and then never do anything. Or on a really dark trajectory, it's enabling, right? Like, and I've seen it where somebody is with, like, a severe alcoholic or a drug addict, but they just want to be so loving and nice, and they sort of enable a lot of lot of other issues and problems, and it could be sort of idle and never stand up for itself. But you have it in your life path. So, that's still what you have to do. That's your path. So it's always good to be mindful of the lessons, the other
Mm.
trajectory of the number. So maybe you're like, you're over serving. Maybe you're allowing somebody to sort of bulldoze you or step on you or intimidate you, let's say in a negotiation, or just even knowing you from this podcast. If, I don't know, somebody's like, well, I can only meet you at 2 a.m, and they live in your time zone. And then you're like, well, okay. Like, so I don't know if you ever do that on some level.
I think the old version of me, maybe as a much younger, may have been less aware of boundaries. But yeah, I definitely appreciate both the light and then sort of the shadow side of all the numbers and what
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, I was just going to say, gently put, it's just being a little bit of a pushover. It doesn't have to be the end of the world that you're letting people beat you up and, things like that. But you also have a couple fives happening here. Five, in mystical Kabbalah, five is the opposite spectrum. So we have Jupiter, which is merciful. And then five in Kabbalah is ruled by Mars. It's Gibora, which means severity. I know in our sort of modern astrology culture, people think Mars and Venus are opposite. Women are Venus, men are Mars, or whatever. And there's truth in that, but the energetic spectrum, the opposite of Jupiter is going to be the passivity, and mercy is going to be force. And so five is a lot more forceful. Your soul is a five, but it doesn't mean it's easy to go low frequency on five because it can be like short tempered, rash, like petty tyrant. And that's not your vibe at all. But five is really a teacher. And even that Mars energy, and that's just one aspect, right? Like we can't say, well, five automatically means Mars. It would be like me saying, you're only a Taurus or something like that. But five is a more disruptive and activating energy. Think about your fifth chakra, even it communicates. So it can, in yoga, we attribute it to the physical body, but also we're incarnated in a physical body where we're here to learn, but then we're here to share and teach. Well, your soul wants to share and teach. Your soul wants to communicate, and your soul wants to sort of cut through. Five is a great energy to sort of cut through the BS, if you will, whatever it is, mental fog or this sort of useless parts. Five is an editor, for example. So it wants to just cut away that which doesn't really serve a purpose. Now, anyone listening, you can see where, that could turn into like destructive or violent or warmongering or a petty tyrant is sort of my catchphrase with it. But you want to activate others, you want to share teachings.
Amazing.
And it
Okay.
wants to cause change.
Yes. Yeah. So five is like the kind of change catalyst. And, it's funny because when I met Jeana and I, mentioned my birthday to her, she said, oh, Remington did this whole kind of talk on 5/5 as like a really kind of interesting day of the year.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm making that up, but
No, well, everyone like wants to hear like how special. Someone will be like, "I was born at 11/11."
no, I don't want to be special. I don't want to be special though.
No, but I think it's sweet and innocent. I mean, I heard about my numbers. I'm like, I'm a double 10. Like, this is like radiant nobility. I was like, hell yeah, that's me. This is my special, uniqueness on my power. But in a way, you can think of these as what are your like special powers? 5/5 is an interesting day. I reserve some of those teachings for, I keep some of those on the DL. But what's interesting to get into the gematria of everything is 55 is the numerical value of the word Naga, which is the Naga serpent, which we utilize a lot in Kundalini. But in mystical Kabbalah, that serpent represents the spiritual aspirant, the student working its way up the sort of the grades of consciousness and working on your spiritual evolution. So, you're like I feel because you have this 4, thank God, you're a gentle force.
That's awesome. Okay. And then maybe we could also just talk about a couple other numbers. I'm sure that folks who are listening would be very curious about. Maybe we could do like
Yeah.
some of your
Well,
favorite. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I want to just talk about the placements really quick.
Okay.
Is that your karma? So I kind of put it down soul, then karma. The karma is the month you're born. And that's what you need to work on, right? It's not like, oh, karma's a bitch. It's out to get you. It's just, I feel like it could be rephrased as like the lessons number, or I've heard some people refer to it as the mastery number, meaning this is what you need to master. So for you, this is also what you need to work on. But you kind of got a bonus because it's the same number as your soul. So the more you work on it, the sort of more the trajectory into like your soul's purpose and on a high mark as being a teacher, let's say on some level. Doesn't mean you have to be a professor, teach third grade or teach yoga. But, this podcast is an outlet that you're sharing teachings. But look at where, I don't know, maybe the younger you didn't, again, 5 can also create resentment because it doesn't speak up for itself. So the karma number, though, that's just what you need to work on. So generally speaking, it's going to take the negative trajectory of that number. But I'll deal with clients, and often they'll say, I used to be like that. I'm not like that anymore. So they just naturally sort of sorted that out. Then the next number is your gift, and that is the double digits of your year. So in your example, 83, you add that up, it's 11. Because it's 11, we keep it. So that's your gift number. The experience number is your 4-digit year. So 1983, when I add all those up, it's 21, reduces to 3. And the experience number is what you have been working with probably for a number of lifetimes. And so I'll look at that. That kind of tells you often something about your past life. That's not the hard and fast official rule, but it's an energy you have familiarity with. Now, a lot of people are learning numerology in the beginning, especially with the tantric numerology. They often misconstrued that as meaning you've been working with it, so you're good at it. And that is definitely not always the case. It's usually the case, but I definitely have seen you keep working at it and you're really good at taking the negative trajectory of it. But usually it's something you just bring to the table because you've done it before.
Fascinating.
Like 3 is a boss. It's you had mentioned it earlier that 3 can definitely be overthinking. It's the positive mind. It's assertive. But the positive mind sounds great. Like, oh, I'm super optimistic. I see the good in all, but it's also too much mind. It's too positive, too much thinking, overly analytical, too scientific, too much structured, just the facts. It can be dry and it could be, but it's a boss number because it's also Saturn in mystical Kabbalah, and Saturn's like the taskmaster. So it is very professional. It's sort of on some level it's aristocratic.
Very interesting. Okay. So interesting. And then
So like certain numbers like 5, 3s, and 8 are like those are more action packed assertive energies. Whereas like 4s and 2s and 7s, 9s, those are more sensitive numbers, a little more passive. So some numbers are good for receiving, some numbers will tell you, let's take action.
got
So
it.
like 1 is a number that it's sort of the number of your soul, not to confuse it with your soul placement, but one, like, and then I get into this, like, if you're seeing one, if you're seeing two. So one is really like a unity with the creator, where there's no sort of barriers and you're in the zone. So one energy really sort of gets you in the zone, like you're doing a project, maybe you're, I don't know, writing. For me, like, I'm like, writing a book becomes the easiest and hardest thing. But all of a sudden I don't have ones in my numerology per se, but we all draw on all these numbers regardless of your chart. And I use that one to just hone in, get clear, get focused, and allow that creative process, which really comes from the creator, in my opinion, to come through, and I just hone it in.
When you say that you work with a one, what do you mean by that? Like, do you kind of look at it? Do you sit with it? Do you meditate on it? Yeah, can you walk us through that
No,
process?
I just know the spiritual teaching,
Mm.
right? So I know this is a principle to apply, right, in some type of creative project.
Hmm.
So I'm not formally like doing the one meditation or doing some ritual. We are utilizing, what people don't know is they're utilizing numerology, they're utilizing mystical Kabbalah in every single moment of their life. So I'm talking to you now. I'm looking across the room. I have a light, or I have these gray curtains. Well, immediately I know, well, gray is associated with Hokman, the tree of life. Well, that is attributed to the number 2. And then there's a whole set of meanings. So I can do numerology based on the clothes you choose to wear. I'll watch it a lot. I'll see someone often drawn to a certain color, and I always think, what's going on with them? Why are they always wearing orange or something like that? And orange would be attributed to the 8 as a color. So the thing is with mystical Kabbalah is everything is coded in everything. And you start to see that the universe is living and breathing and talking to you. You just never knew how to pay attention.
Hmm.
I mean, you can completely deconstruct a person's psychology, behavior, and sometimes, the number's a number, the color's a color. It's not always such layered with deep meaning. So sorry, all you Pisces listening that like need the deepest meaning and everything. But it is sort of in that flow. Um, so I do touch on the colors in my book. Like 8, which is orange, is also attributed to Mercury, is also attributed to the pranic life force. Let's say you're a student, you're studying for something, or you have like, you got to catch up on a lot of work, or you're staying late in the office, whatever your field is, wear some orange. I mean, you can apply color magic as numerology magic. So you need like a sharp, focused mind. Well, orange is great for that. And in other yogic traditions, swamis will wear orange because it's also healing to others. And orange is the Kabbalistic code that is the 8 number, that is the pranic life force, which is healing.
Hmm. That's amazing.
So,
Okay. I'm
yeah,
gonna go.
it's just so much more layered. I mean, you gotta start with these little boxes in a spreadsheet, right? I notice humans really just, they want a logical spreadsheet, but really this practice is to get you to a place where you transcend that logic, and then you're just living and breathing and uniting with it all. And so the synchronicity shit can just start working out. Your life can really start working out for you.
So, can you talk a little bit about synchronicity and numerical kind of maybe repeating numbers? There's a lot of talk in kind of mainstream culture around these like 3 repeating numbers, like 222, 333, 444. What does it mean when you see repeating numbers? Is it just to pay attention even more so to a certain number, or do they have maybe specific codes when they're bundled together?
It can be all of that. I mean, the sort of best broad stroke general statement, um, because it is, if you really get down to like a granular accuracy with everything, it's a message for you, but for the individual. But generally, if you're seeing a lot of alignment, it take it as a good sign you're in a flow, you know? But every number holds a frequency and there's deeper messages. If you have my book and you look up the single, you can always start, well, what is, I'm seeing, 444 everywhere. Well, anything that's triple, threes in mystical Kabbalah, three is called the idea of form. And that comes from the notion that there's like creation, and then the tree of life, then there's like creation from this like distant abstract, we don't even know, our human consciousness will never comprehend it, don't bother. And then at one point there's one point created, and that's, say, God, right? And you can throw in whatever, a noun that you enjoy, and that one point created itself and then became 2 points, and those 2 points, if you draw them, so the number 2 is symbolized by a line. Now, in mystical Kabbalah, this is the idea of force. So there's just this line, there's this just force created. It's also sort of a divine archetype of divine masculine. And it gets so much higher than like your gender, right? Like, I have a boy, so I'm going to give him, whatever, a horse and Marlboros, and a gun. Like, it transcends all of that. But if you think of that image, and it is sort of, quote, phallic, that is this idea of force. And then from there, another dot was created, and then we have a triangle. So in the universe, in the creation of everything, once we have these 3 dots, we have the first time that you can make a triangle. We have a form, and that form is a container, and that can hold. So anything 3 is on one level is just extra manifested, if that makes sense. So if you're seeing triple numbers, you can always reference my book and say, well, okay, I know that 4 is this open-mindedness. So now it's like hitting at a more intensified, more actualized frequency. Do the 3, but I would take it as flow. I mean, every number, the magical teaching is every number is infinite. There is no difference. So there's no hierarchy, right? Like, I'll have people, they have a chart, and they have a lot of like 10s and 11s and the, quote, higher value, numerical value numbers. It doesn't mean anything. It's someone who has a lot of 2s and 4s and 3s, or whatever the case is. But anytime we're dealing with a triple number frequency, it's way more alive, way more apparent. That's probably why people notice them, because it's way more in your face.
Fascinating. And Remington, what about prosperity? I mean, you've written an entire book on prosperity. Are there specific numbers or patterns in numerology that are associated with prosperity or abundance?
That's a great question. And I'm going to say yes, and to some extent no. But the yes on one level is every number has a pathway that is prosperous, right? So that's why I'm doing numerology. That's why I do a chart. What's your like optimal prosperity out of the frequencies that you naturally have that you're working with, right? But as far as like, this year, well, like as of recording this, we're in a 7-year, right? 2020 what is it? 2023.
Yeah.
Sorry. Since having a kid and COVID and moving across the country, I'm like, wait, what year is it? It's like one time I woke up, I had such deep sleep, and I was like having this beautiful wake up, and I literally was like, what incarnation is this again? And I'm pretty grounded, I'm like, I'm pretty, psychologically together, I think. But the numbers, like I was calling this the 7-year, and the numerology of the year, just add up the all 4 numbers, and it's a 7, 2023. It reduces to 7. 7 is an energy of prosperity. It's attributed to Venus. Venus is one of the prosperity planets in astrology, sometimes called the lesser fortune. And it's like really nice things. And Venus, we kind of a lot of your listeners might know the goddess Venus, but those are prosperity from earthly delights to being beautiful to deeper prosperity of true self-worth and self-value. So 7 is a very prosperous number. It's also a very sensitive number, so it tends to go south fast. And it's funny because I'll deal with a lot of people. Core issues are often just a level of insecurity and not valuing oneself enough. And maybe those are a lot of people that I track that I like to help. But I think, I certainly have done that. There's aspects where we probably all do it on some level, but 7 is it's a juicy, prosperous number. I mean, it's sensual, it's delightful, it's good things. It can be financial prosperity. Now, 8 to me is the number of money on one level. Like the 7 is nice things showing up, but the 8 is like impactful. It's the infinite life force. Well, I view money as a form of life force just manifested as money. Right? If you're super like full of life force, high energy, you have a lot of options. You can hike up the big mountain. You can keep on going. You have endurance. If you have a lot of money, you have a lot more options. So that's very prosperous. But it's so as far as like worldly prosperity, those are great numbers. But every number of these teachings, if we just go 1 through 11, each number's positive assets are going to open up a lot of prosperity. 2 is called the negative mind. But what that really means is the open space. And so it longs to belong, but it loves community. 2 is like a big hug. So two's prosperity is wonderful relationships, wonderful friendships, and receiving, right? You've probably met people, they just, they think of something, they just open up and it shows up for them. Well, that's 2 energy can be that. 4 can, on a good note, can be that because it's also Jupiter and it's a little lucky. So I mean, I could get into each number and you got to look at prosperity and what it's bringing and how it's creating sort of an asset, I guess, in your
Mm.
life.
Super fascinating. I mean, I think when it comes to prosperity, it could be interesting to just actually see like maybe a specific example of when numerology kind of impacted a decision in the direction of prosperity for you, and it doesn't have to be financial or monetary. It's just like, in the flow of abundance, like where in your life or maybe some of the other, folks that you've worked with, have you seen numerology help them make a decision that ultimately led to success or growth?
Well, it's probably the easiest to use myself right now. I do have good example. Well, all right. One person I know, they were in a bit of a financial pinch and I was teaching them about 777 and how in especially in like American culture, 777's like lucky numbers, like the lucky slot machines, things like that. So it can just be this like, whoa, here's something showing up, a little a financial upgrade, perhaps some sort of blessing. Maybe it's like, hey, here's some gifts and new luxurious clothes. But I was sharing about it. They After our little talk, they started seeing 7-7 everywhere. They texted me. They're like, whoa, you're so right. The synchronicity. And then that same evening, they got a message for a really big, high value job for them in their field to go do this project. So it was like this sort of lucky slot machine showed up. Now, for me, I'll apply it. Here's one of my biggest lessons is I'm a 10 soul. I'm a 10-10, right? And so that's sort of star power energy that's very extroverted, that's really putting yourself out there. And a number of years ago, I started doing that. I said, I'm going to apply this to my life and I'm going to allow myself to be seen and allow myself to be known. And when I started doing that, for me, that's when the prosperity of that created so much of what I have in my life now. And I'm pretty fearless in putting myself out there. And so whether it was, I just literally started like social media, and then, within our yoga community years ago, I started speaking more. I started sharing more. I was up on stage more. And I also just owned it. And I realized I'm a natural at this, right? So 10 is some energy of fame, not like I'm mega famous, but I am somewhat known in this sort of micro way. And then I got my book deal. I didn't have to pitch anything. My publisher reached out to me, and they had heard about me so that's the 10. So that was the prosperity of 10. So really, in a way, each number is a call to action. And sometimes that action might be, receptivity, but this call to action, and by applying that number for you, the more you teach with the 5 soul, the more you communicate and share teachings, you'll see things will start working out more. And so that was one thing. But I do have a funny story. When we were buying our house, and we were buying our house in a very competitive market, I know everyone knows Vermont is like quaint and rural, but there's not a lot of houses here because it's so rural and quaint. And because of COVID, all of a sudden, all these people could move here that could have never moved here before. And so when we saw our house, first of all, my wife had a dream of an amount that we made the offer, and we got it for that amount. But I was seeing 5s everywhere, 555. And I was like, fuck. I was like, it's going to be a battle. Like I need to bring a nuclear bomb to like a pencil fight. If I want to, like, I took the sign. On some level it was war, because I'm going to have to make an offer, and I'm going to have to, some offers you can use grace and smooth, and the homeowners likes you, and the numbers are fair. But I was like, I have to come in swinging hard, and I have to apply that sword of 5. The harshness, I have to cut everybody out. And I'm not like Mr. Hardnose, but I just knew. So there's buying a house, you have this escalation clause. I just shot it up as high as we could go, which was way higher than the house, because I just wanted the house. Like we had to leave, and I'm like, we just had a baby. But I took those signs, and I did that, and I came in fucking fast and hard, and I was swinging, and like we got the house. And the thing is, we got the house, it never even went to the escalation. So the $60,000 more I would have paid, we never had to. But I feel like part of that was just knowing and having that mindset, right? And knowing I had to take everybody else out. There's 12 offers on this house.
Wow.
People were flying in from Texas. People were buying houses sight unseen on FaceTime. So, but that I paid attention, and I knew I was like in a bit of a fight. I wouldn't, and when you see 555, probably there's some conflict might be showing up. Just come prepared. That's all. It doesn't mean you have to go argue with everybody.
Right. That's amazing.
It's like, I don't know. These people don't know who I was. I just set it up so the numbers were fiercer than everybody else's numbers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow. So, okay, so that's a really cool example. Now I'm thinking back to like my 5/5 birthday, and I'm like, it's interesting. People have always said to me, like, you've really changed my life. Like you were real. Like that's always a very common thing that I hear about from people, like in terms of being a catalyst.
I just got really chills on that. But that's what 5 wants to do. Teachers, the 5, they want to take away the things that are dead and useless, and want to activate change, and that's 5. That's amazing to hear that.
So fascinating. So, okay, so Remington, I have so many more questions, but unfortunately we're coming at time. What about, the sort of things that have surprised you the most looking back on your journey, or it could be about things that surprise you about numerology since the time that you've been doing this?
Well, the first, gosh, once you get on this type of path and you're on it too, we utilize the very same techniques and then other techniques, but um I guess the thing is the times that I've gone into scarcity, lost hope, or think everything's about to fall apart or something's doomed, like spirit always provides. And I've just been amazed time after time when I'm thinking, oh shit, either I'm not in the position where I have to get out of problems as much as was my younger self, but just seeing the evolution of growth where it just becomes compounded and things keep opening up. So I'm going to say I think just, spirit does have a higher plan. Doing these types of practices, whether it's numerology, yoga, even astrology, all of this, it just you start to align more and you align to what your higher purpose and your higher destiny is. And that's been like my greatest miracle. um sure, is there tangible nuts and bolts? Like I'm always like, I bought a house through numerology. Like, if you asked me that 20 years ago, I'd be like, that would be crazy. um and also, I do want to say just one quick thing too. The numerology with the mystical Kabbalah, numerology, astrology is numerology, tarot is numerology, right? So it sort of merges into all these different systems. So if you are more familiar with astrology, you don't know it yet, but you're actually practicing mystical Kabbalah and you're practicing numerology. So it just synchronizes. But I think the miracle that has been success by tapping into a higher plan, and also, I think we change our calibers so that higher plan becomes an even higher plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like we're
yeah.
not set in stone,
Right,
right?
right.
But I think that especially with Kundalini yoga and powerful meditations, we shift the frequencies, we shift our energy, and it's like we build up some level of spiritual bank account that doesn't have to translate into money, but I feel like we build up all this energy, we have to channel it into the world with a purpose.
Mm.
And so you're channeling it, you have a podcast and the other work that you do, and I channel it through the teachings and whatever books. I have a podcast, the list goes on. um and I'm amazed sort of every day. Like, I'm always like, wow, how do we even pull off this? Or and I know there's greater things in store.
Mm. Yeah, wow. So, Remington, what do you want to tell our listeners about kind of their well-being when it comes to numerology? What's your main takeaway, call to action?
Well, if you want to start practicing numerology as a sacred, meditative, have a romance with it, and free up your mind and start allowing. And there's a sensitivity that can really be garnered, and you apply sensitivity, but there's like a rasa, and as you start to do it, it just the if you do it without the like lust of result of what does this number mean, what do I have to do, and if you ease up, and again meditatively and poetically, um it'll start flowing in a way, and then that answer is going to come, and it's going to show up, and you're going to get it. And I mean, I do charts, and every time I'm always amazed, but I know like I know that it's going to be accurate, but I'm coming up with things that aren't going to be in my book. So if you're new to it, and let's say you use my book, again, that's a great springboard, but you're gonna come up. I mean, Yasmin, if you start doing it, you're gonna come up with the way more correct answer because it's a message for you than just as correct or more correct than say me, who, yeah, I'm known for practicing it and I have clients, but because this is a message about your soul, your purpose, your journey. And just like how I saw those fives about the house, that was the universe saying, all right, I just got to come in a little, I got to need the big guns. And so it creates a flow, man. Like I gotta say, since really getting into it, it just opened up my higher destiny. Right. So where I came from a sort of a life of a lot of conflict and scarcity and problems and always getting myself out of holes and depression. Um, it's it's the practice that led to everything else growing for me. And um I guess I'm on a current that is much more abundant.
Amazing. Wow, Remington. What a fascinating conversation. I am definitely blown away and definitely want to spend more time looking at these numbers. I do have your book, and I suggest everyone listening to this to go check out both of your books. You have one on numerology and one on prosperity. And are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you and learn more about your work, Remington?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, just enter my name on the internet. My website directs, but if you really want to also go deeper, where I get into astrology, I get into tarot, I get into yoga, I get into the what's happening in the zeitgeist and the energies and things like that, is my Patreon, and that's my little online mystery school. And like a lot of this numerology info is in there. I break down all the tarot cards. I'm probably going to do another round on that. That is a great resource. And then, my books and those are your best bets. My Instagram is at the mystical arts. I do have a ton of fake accounts. Not me, but other people impersonating me. So just make sure it's the right one. But yeah, the Patreon is where I go way deeper into everything.
Okay, amazing. And on Patreon, we can just look up your name and find you.
Yeah. And then I teach online workshops. So just find my name. There's a lot available. But it's workshops, Patreon, and one-on-one sessions.
Amazing, amazing. Remington, thank you so much for your time. This was so, so lovely. Really feeling very inspired by this conversation.
Oh, I'm super grateful. Yasmin. Also, you have a great voice, so I'm glad you're doing this.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you so
smooth. You have a smooth voice, for podcasting.
Oh my gosh. Funny story that you mentioned that things were coming to you. This podcast actually came to me. So did not go
Okay, I love it. Well, you're an 11 gift, which is sound current. You have a good voice. You're communicating. You're getting your sound out there. That's
Interesting.
why I thought it was interesting that you have an audio podcast where a lot of people now like YouTube it and whatnot. I have an audio podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking about this before it started. So that audio podcasts have a kind of a different like listening quality to it and a remembering quality. So yeah. So
Yeah,
Remington.
well, you're hanging out with your friends. Well, it was a delight, and anytime I know we're on touch and social media, and next time I venture to LA, I'll probably see you.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, please do anytime. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about numerology with Remington Donovan. And you could find him online by just entering his name on Google. And you can tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.